Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we venture back to the Age of Sigmar. With the recent release of the gigantic Sons of Behemat faction, we thought it was time to bring you an introductory army building guide to this rather individual of factions. Positioning themselves very much like the equivalent of Imperial Knights in the mortal realms, models that will quite literally dwarf those that you'll likely face on the other side of the table. So if you like shifting fewer models across the battlefield, then these guys may be the right fit for you. So who are the Sons of Behemat? Well, first I suppose we need to know who Behemat is. Well, he's one of many but few monstrous constellations known as ZODIAC GODBEASTS, beings that exist above the natural order of things. The World Titan, as he was known, was a colossal creature made of living stone. However, he met his unfortunate demise when Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, bamboozled him by infecting him with a Nurgle plague. His subsequent delirious actions in sealing Azeroth from the mortal realms sparked the ire of Sigmar, who dispatched his Stormcast Eternals to vanquish him. With the absence of their god, the Gargants, who weren't carrying a full deck of cards in the first place, became even more aimless and confused. Some starting their own tribes, and others acting as paid mercenaries for the mortal races. And one byproduct of the fall of Behemat, though, was that these Gargants started to grow and grow in size, leaving some to speculate that one of these now mega Gargants would eventually succeed him as a new World Titan. Now worshipping the unofficial overlord of the Grand Alliance of Destruction, Gorka Morka. They have their own battle tome for you now to construct your own giant army, or ally one of these big fellas with your chosen faction. What's a little bit jarring when you peruse your options is that there are only 3 types of Mega Gargant, all of which can be made from buying the same newly released box, and then one war scroll for the usual sized Man Crusher Gargants, now available in a collection of 2. So these guys can form their own army, again very much like Imperial Knights can, but just beware that although they have rules that count them as multiple models in terms of securing objectives, they're still far from representing strength in numbers on the table, and with all the negative gameplay connotations that infers. However, they can also be hired as mercenaries, or mechanically speaking, allies. Only one Mega Gargant can be taken this way, and if you're a destruction faction, you have your pick of the litter. But the other Grand Alliances have only a specific one available, which we'll explain more in detail later. Now we have that out of the way, let's introduce you to the 3 Big Daddy Mega Gargants and who they can be buddies with. First up is Mr. Kraken Eater, the jack-of-all-trades giant with both melee and ranged options, coming in at a cost of 490 points. What makes this little big fella different from the other 2 is his unique ability, Stuff 'em in me net, which sees you trying to roll double the wounds characteristics of D3 target models that you piled into in order to deadhead them. The more interesting one, however, is Get Off Me Land, which allows you to quite remarkably, I might add, boot an objective 2d6 inches in any direction. In so doing, allowing you to manipulate and consolidate objective markers. Like all Mega Gargants, they can be allied with destruction armies, but also those from Order. This particular mercenary, when he's taken as an ally, will also be dead cunning, at least for a Gargant, which will give him the optional downside of fighting last in said fight phase, but getting the upside of rerolls to hit if he does. Next up is the War Stomper, rocking in at 480 points and favouring an up close and personal bashing of heads approach, eschewing any ranged options. It's a shame then that he's slightly slower than either of the other 2. What makes him unique is his Titanic Boulder Club, that has a number of attacks equal to the number of models within engagement range, but capped at 10. His remaining unique ability, Hurled Body, is another selector model and roll double its wounds jobbo. If you succeed on a further 4-up, you can throw said model up to 12 inches at another unit, dealing a number of mortal wounds equal to its own characteristic. These guys can be paired with Chaos factions as well as you-know-who. And this particular merc has an ability that shakes the earth, improving his melee jump up and down to all unit types including monsters, but more importantly subtracts 1 to enemy hit rolls if he's already fought this turn. The remaining big lump is the Gatebreaker, hosting a somewhere in between set of melee and range capabilities at a cost of 490 points. With the highest movement characteristic of them all, but shorter range than the Kraken Eater, the overall theme of this guy is that he does less attacks but more damage per, rocking only 1 unique ability in the form of Smashdown, a specialist tool that does more damage if the enemy is in terrain or garrisoned. But perhaps more interestingly, he can destroy terrain features, reducing them to rubble. As a merc, he pairs with Death factions, and in case you needed reminding, Destruction as well. Like the others, when he becomes a merc for hire, he gets a cherry on top. Here with the unfortunately titled Grievous Halitosis, where he'll pick an enemy unit within 3 inches, roll dice equal to the number of models in said unit, and then dishing out mortal wounds on 6s. Then there's the miniature, well at least comparatively speaking, Man Crusher Gargants, coming in at 180 points or 480 points for a unit of 3. On the one hand, you want to keep them separate to allow them to spread themselves across the battlefield, but you can't argue with the discount of 60 points, equivalent to 1 and a bit command points for the trio. As we've already said, each Grand Alliance can take 1 of the 3 megas, but Destruction can take any of them, and they do not count towards your ally points limit, normally about 400 in a 2000 point game. So how do we make these big daddies an army of their own? Well, you really don't want to be playing games less than 2000 points with them. Well, you certainly can, but what's the point? 1500 you can get away with, I suppose, but 2000 is the sweet spot. You can then take a list with all 3 totaling 1460 points, and then pairing them with 3 separate units of Man Crushers for a perfectly round 2 and 3 zeros. We'll call this the Men and Their Wives list, and it's effectively your default way to build a gargantuan army. You then get to pick one of the megas to be your general. In so doing, your army will become one of the 3 corresponding tribes, receiving the respective allegiance abilities. Alternatives to this approach would be 2 megas of your choosing, 3 units of standalone Man Crushers, and 1 unit of 3 of them, which we'll call the I like to have the best of both worlds build, that should enable you to be a bit more flexible on the battlefield. Finally, on the other end of the spectrum, you can take a list with a mega of your choosing and 8 Johnny on their own little Man Crushers, which we'll call the Christopher Lambert There Can Be Only One build. Either way you swing, you're not packing many models on the table, and it's only the Kraken Hunter and its associated tribe that gives you much in the way of overcoming numerical disadvantage. Still, balance is going to be all over the place on a casual level when you play armies like this, but I suspect the reason you're playing them in the first place is for a bit of fun, so don't sweat their up in the air level of competitiveness. That's it though for this introduction to the Sons of Behemat. As you can see, there's not much to it, which is both a blessing and a curse. Let me know in the comments if you're enjoying what is currently intermittent Age of Sigmar content, what with the new 40k edition still looming large. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.